Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast. With technology, we are met with endless distractions, and finding focus and efficiency can feel like an uphill battle. So in this week's episode, we're speaking to meditation teacher Tom Cronin to learn about what meditation can do for our productivity, focus, and efficiency, as well as how to practice it. With first-hand experience of the impeccable shift in performance and overall well-being with the help of meditation early on in his career as a finance broker, Tom has been training people all over the world on how to meditate ever since. We are extremely fortunate to have him here with us today. So, hi, Tom. Lovely having you on the show. How are you going?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm going very well, actually, this morning.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So, before I begin, in your line of work, could you tell us about what the most common misconception is?
The thing that I come across the most, two biggest, I guess, impediments people face. One is that they just don't have enough time. They measure their sense of time on activity, on getting things done. And the idea of sitting and closing their eyes, withdrawing their senses and going to meditation doesn't rank high enough for them as a way of getting that into the things that they do in the day. So they tend to have this idea that they just don't have enough time for it, but it's really a matter of values and priorities. The second thing that a lot of them struggle with is that they have this idea that they're not going to be able to still their mind, and that meditation is only successful if there's no movement of the mind, if there's stillness in the mind. And so we've got to demystify that, help them understand that that's not necessarily what meditation is. And there's many different forms of meditation, many different experiences to be had in meditation. But this idea that you've got a busy mind and you're not going to be able to still it is the one that most people struggle with the most.
And with finding focus and efficiency at work, is it necessary to do the meditation practice that allows you to still your mind, or are there other meditation practices that will allow you to find the focus?
There's a couple of ways we can look at that. One is definitely having a deeper transcending style of meditation. One thing that I support organizations, companies, and individuals in getting into is this sort of idea of flow state. And flow state is this ability to be so present, but so efficient because you're present. And it's really interesting. A lot of people think of meditation as withdrawing from the world or, not being in the world. But what we find with these deeper transcending meditation styles that I teach, that we find we get more drawn into the world because we have greater capacity when we're present and not stressed and overwhelmed and fatigued. Then we have greater opportunity, greater capacity, and greater adaptive capacity to be successful. And so those transcending meditations are really useful in clearing the mind of the clutter and just leaving you in a state of what is here now and being present and addressing that particular thing that you're in front of right now. There's other meditations around visualizations, getting clear on your intentions, your goals, your visions of what the future version of yourself that you're in the process of becoming right now. So we're always in the process of becoming the future version of ourselves from this current version of ourselves. But getting a little bit more clear about what that future version of yourself looks like with our visualization meditations, then that really gives us like a North Star roadmap where we're going and what that looks like when we get there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I myself never knew that there was a meditation practice that allows you to be more present and fuller capacity. So it's great to hear that. And I'm really keen to demystify more of these misconceptions. But before we get further into detail, I'd love to get to know you better. This is Have You Met Tom? And my first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I'm a bit of a TV and movie junkie. I really like watching movies and TV shows. So that's a bit of a thing that I do with my family. It's kind of a nice way for us to commune together and hang out and just, really surrender. And, I'm doing a lot of intense work. So I find that really enjoyable. I love doing saunas and ice baths. I love doing yoga. I love surfing. I love spending a lot of time in nature. So quite often, particularly when I'm on computers all day lecturing or doing coaching programs, then I like to just really step away from technology and sit by the ocean, sit in some bushland, and just really spend a lot of time in silence. And of course, I love spending time with my family. Of course, they're a big priority in my life as well.
Oh, that's so sweet. So, what TV shows and movies have you enjoyed recently?
I'm a bit of a sucker at the moment for Welcome to Wrexham. Watching, I like reality shows, so I really like things I can really watch people evolving and growing and watch their own personal development. I guess even in my spare time when I'm watching TV, I kind of like the whole process of watching someone evolve and grow. So things like that. It's a show about a soccer team that went from really low levels in the English Soccer League from the fifth division and continually climbing up through a lot of things that have been, helping them grow and succeed. So it's really great to watch that show. I enjoy that one. Surprisingly, I like Suits, which is a really interesting TV show about a lawyer firm in America. I like reality TV shows around cooking, surprisingly. So I'm giving away all my secrets now.
And do you cook yourself?
I love cooking. My family are very happy with the fact that I enjoy cooking. They are the wonderful recipients of that. So I really enjoy cooking. Yeah.
So, what are some of your go to dishes, or you know what? What are some of the most requested, most highly requested dishes that your family love?
I've probably got three main sort of big hits within the family. I'm a meat eater, so some people might be surprised at that as a meditation teacher and a meditator. But my body, I've tried going vegan and vegetarian for a while, and it just didn't seem to want to let me do that just yet. It's a work in progress that I'm sort of moving towards less meat, but I do find that the animal fats, the vitamins and minerals and nutrients and trace elements that I get from meat really nourishes my body. So I just surrendered to that. That's what it is. So yeah, my curries, my lamb curries are very, very popular, I must admit, in our house. And I do a pretty mean nachos and tacos as well.
Oh, that sounds delectable. What kind of tacos do you do?
Generally, I do a chicken and I do a beef one as well.
Have you tried doing a fried fish taco?
I've never tried a fried fish taco, but that definitely could go on the menu, I think.
Yeah, because do you use soft shell tacos?
We do a mix. We do the soft shell and we do the hard shell. We tend to have two options on the table when I serve.
Yeah, fried fish because it's so crispy with the batter,
Mm.
goes so well with the soft shell taco
A bit
and
of crunch there, right?
a bit of crunch. Yeah, with the lime, just think about that, cutting through all of that fried fat. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
I do a
I'm so.
pretty mean fish laksa, I must say. So
Oh,
it's the things that make that fish laksa so special is that my condiments. So I put coriander, some roasted tomato, and some fried pineapple, fried in butter. So the condiments really bring the laksa to life, I must admit.
yeah, that sounds amazing. Do you do your laksa from scratch, like with the paste?
I'd love to say yes, but no. I open a jar and pour it into a saucepan with
That's
some coconut cream and some fish stock.
That's honestly fair enough, and that's more than most people do. I found a really great laksa in the city here that I have just been going to nonstop, and so I don't even make my laksa at home. So you're doing far more than I am already, so you
Can
should
you
be
let the
proud of
secret
that.
out on which laksa place? Because I'm in Melbourne in a few weeks to teach meditation. So I'm a fan of finding some very good laksas. I've got one in Sydney. It's the only one I'll go to. But where's this one? You've got to let
Yeah,
me in on that
it's
secret.
yeah, it's in the CBD. I'll send you a link to the place.
That'd be
One
great.
of my colleagues actually recommended me the place, and it's incredible because it has grilled eggplant, and they really char the eggplant, and the eggplant just soaks all of the broth up, and it's really an experience, I would say.
So I'll measure it against the Malay House in Sydney, which has a queue every lunchtime, probably 200 deep, to get their latkes at lunchtime. And so if it's as good as that, then I'll be pretty happy to hear.
All right, we'll see about that. But aside from Laksa, when it comes to role models in your life, either professionally or personally, is there anyone that you look up to?
I think at the moment, business wise, I'm really inspired by what Joe Dispenza's doing. He's kind of really leading the way, particularly with his retreat model. I'm looking to emulate and follow in his path of having large scale retreats and taking my work into a bigger audience. And yeah, he's doing phenomenal stuff, particularly in his retreats. So that's a big one. I'm very inspired by a lot of the previous enlightened masters that have walked on the planet: Paramahansa Yogananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Gurudev Swami Brahmananda Sarasvati, Sri Sri Nandamayi Ma. These are very inspiring people to me that I constantly tap into for inspiration. I have an ongoing, I guess, inspiration and communication with Jesus. I'm not of a religious sort of what's the right word? I'm not in a sort of community in a religious sense, but I do find that he, as a human being, is very inspiring. And yeah, I find inspiration from him and his work.
What traits of your role models would you say that you find particularly admirable?
I think their level of uh, the wisdom that they share, their level of purity, their level of holiness, the way they embodied the wisdom and the knowledge so profoundly and so purely is for me something that I look up to and am inspired by.
Mhm. And it sounds like you've taken great cues from your role models as well with your meditation practice and teaching people through meditation. So, yeah, it sounds like you've got a great group of people to look up to there and that you've really channeled throughout your life. So, that's great to hear. And I'm so glad to have learned more about you. But now we're moving on to the interview section. And this is where we talk a little bit more about meditation for the workplace and enhancing focus and efficiency. And before we get started, the first thing that I'd like to ask you is how would you define personal development?
It's a process that we're always in. It's just a matter of whether we're resisting the developmental side of that. So we're always in personal development and we're always getting cues on how to develop, how to evolve, how to grow, how to be more. And so that untapped potential is always waiting for us to explore, discover, and utilize. It's just that for most of us, myself included, at times, we don't know what we don't know and we don't know how to tap into what we can know. And so the universe is really good at giving us cues and guidance, mostly through karma. And it's if we're ignoring certain things, the universe will give us a little tap on the shoulder to try and bring our attention to that. If it's something that might be uh, a pattern of behavior that might no longer be useful, that might need to be let go of, or you know, particular thought forms that are now redundant and we're hanging on to those. So, yeah, we're always in personal development. It's just a matter of how open we are to embracing that and how open we are to embodying that, I think are the keys.
And in your opinion, in what ways does workplace productivity and efficiency contribute to our personal growth?
I think workplace productivity is a result of our personal growth. I don't think it's something that contributes to it. I think it's the result of it. So we become much more productive, much more efficient, much more effective when we realize our greater potential, when we clear the stresses out of our vessel, out of our mind, our nervous system. We by default start to become more productive and more efficient in the way we do things, which is again getting back into flow state. So flow state really is a result of clearing, and what remains is this increased adaptive capacity, increased productivity, increased efficiency, increased brain potential, brain usage. So these are all things that come as a result of doing our personal development.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And you did mention a few meditation practices before, so we know there are quite a variety of them. And from observation meditation to mindfulness meditation, and the ones that you mentioned before as well. So, what practices have you found to be particularly effective when it comes to supporting workplace productivity and focus?
I think the one that is really critical, and we need to integrate this in workplaces and schools much more than it currently is, and that's the deeper transcending styles of meditation. So what happens is that you give a particular sound or mantra to the student and teach them how to use that mantra or that sound to take the mind away from the external world where it projects all day long to some form or phenomenon. Your mind is always going to a form or phenomenon, and the reason why the mind's doing that is it creates some degree of stimulation and activation in the nervous system in the body. That's why we get very drawn to the stimuli of the phones and the Spotify and podcasts and Netflix, because the dynamic exchange between subject and object is what we're looking for, that stimulation, activation, and elevation. So what the mantra does is it takes the mind inward, away from that stimuli, away from duality, away from forms and phenomena. It takes the mind quieter and quieter to stillness and silence. Now, that's not an empty void of nothingness. It's actually a very dynamic field that's bursting with all potential and all creativity, just at the subtlest level beyond form and phenomenon. So it's getting very um, esoteric, I guess, in some ways for the audience, and maybe I might be losing some people. But really, what we're looking to do is take the mind away from external world, take it into stillness and silence, but take it into what we call transcendence, which is now the mind is not thinking, but it's in the field of infinite consciousness. So now we're a conscious awareness itself. And then what happens is we now get this really interesting dynamic when we come out of that transcendent experience over time through the regularity of that practice on a morning and evening basis. We now have two things going on. We have conscious awareness, which is watching the intellect, the thinking mind. And this is when things get really powerful and really dynamic, because we start to realize that we're not our thoughts. We have thoughts, and we're consciousness now watching the thoughts, and we choose which thoughts we want to embrace and entertain. Now we come into sovereignty and authority over the mind as the awareness itself. And this is when we start to really optimize the human experience.
That sounds that sounds very like an out of body experience almost. And
That's true.
yeah,
And that's an experience that many people will have, is that when they transcend, they go, I don't know where I just went, but wherever I went, that was amazing. And where they went is into a non localized field of consciousness itself. So, the analogy I'd like to give the audience and yourself to be able to grasp this in some way is that if you think of the phone has some degree of information inside the phone, which is an iOS operating system if you've got Apple. And now you have an operating system that's being programmed by programmers that aren't the phone, and they put that information into the phone. And that's what most people's brain is like. Their brain is a set of codes and programs that have been indoctrinated into them through their childhood and through their life in this lifetime, but also indoctrinated into them through their ancestry and the genetics that put that code in there as well. So a lot of people will say, gosh, you sound like your mother, because you're actually talking like your mother, because that's the code your mother gave you. Now, the thing with the phone is that that operating system is inside the phone, which is the thoughts that we have, and the idea that we belong to this particular locality, which is, say, the phone's body. But what the phone also has is this capacity to access information that is all around the phone. And that's the World Wide Web of information, an infinite field almost of information that the phone has the ability to access and open itself up to. And the phone is in that information. The information is not in the phone. The power of the phone is its ability to access the information that's around the phone. And so when we transcend, we actually transcend, which means we go beyond the limited framework of the thinking mind and the locality of the physical body. And we start to realize that we're actually a field of intelligence, which is an infinite field of all possibility and all potential and all creativity. And that is a little bit of an out of body experience in some respects, yes.
you mentioned the regularity of this practice being quite important, being Mondays and Mondays,
Twice a
mornings,
day.
twice a day, not Mondays, mornings and evenings. In all fairness, Monday and morning are pretty similar words, okay? But you mentioned that the regularity of it is important, being mornings and evenings. So is the duration of the practice important as well?
We do recommend twice a day, mornings and evenings, and Mondays as well. And that would be roughly around 25 minutes. And there's no sort of set, you must do it at this amount of time. But what we find is that 10 minutes is probably just, it's better than nothing, but it's just a little bit too short to get into that really deep transcendent experience. And the analogy I like to use on the consistency, why we want to have this morning and evening, is that if you take a needle and thread and you take that needle and thread and you pierce the surface of some cloth and you put it below the surface, and then you bring it back up above the surface and then below the surface and back up above the surface and below the surface, you're stitching into the cloth some new identity, new experience. And this is a state we get into over time through the regularity of transcending and coming back out, transcending and coming back out. And by doing that consistency rather than just once a week, then we're becoming more familiarized and more stabilized into that deep stillness that is beyond the thinking mind. And that becomes the foundation for your daily activity, which means that you're permanently established in flow state. You don't try to get in flow state, you're already operating from flow state. And that's again how we start to optimize the human experience.
Right. And so for beginners, what are some of the most common challenges in trying to start practicing this deeper transcending meditation practice?
Yeah, generally we don't find any obstacles or challenges. The biggest challenge, I guess, once they've learned it, the biggest challenge is getting them to learn it, because the way it's taught is with a teacher, and it's in a specific, personalized, localized format. So I'm traveling to Melbourne to teach in Melbourne, and that's where people can learn from me. And this is what we do full time. So there is an exchange to be made. So some people want to just go and learn something on YouTube, or they want to get a cheap app, and and there's nothing wrong with taking that pathway. Um, what we tend to find is that when someone makes the exchange and sits with that teacher over 4 sessions, either on a weekday basis or a weekend basis, I teach on weekends, then there's a much greater buy in and receptivity and level of interaction and engagement from the student because of that level of investment of time and money. When we just try and wing it and we just do a quick YouTube video that we've watched, what we tend to find is the flippancy of that and the level of engagement and interaction with that becomes quite disengaging after time. And we don't find there's a lot of retention. What we're really looking for with people is retention rates with their meditation, because that's where we're going to get the success and the benefits. If it's just a
Right.
one off where we don't really, that was okay, I didn't really enjoy it too much, I didn't get much out of it, and then they just drop it, then what's going to happen is that they're just not going to get the level of benefits from the practice.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to going to like remote uni classes versus going to physical uni classes, where it's a lot easier to interact with the teacher and ask questions and really get that hands on learning when you're in person. Whereas remotely, it's a lot harder to really stay engaged for the students as well. So for those who are unable to find a meditation teacher, which I know is probably not impossible and it requires some research and probably requires a bit of trial and error to finding a teacher who does um, suit your learning style, I guess. But for those who are unable to do it, are there any entry point exercises that can really help propel them into the right direction?
Yeah, first and foremost was, to get the Rolls Royce experience, we do recommend Googling, and you can Google Vedic meditation or transcendental meditation, primordial sound technique in your area. Find a teacher of any of those particular modalities, which are all very similar. And, you know, if you resonate with that teacher, you could go and do an intro talk or call them up, have a chat with them and see if that's going to be a good fit for you. And, this is the beauty of the world. Not everyone will be suitable for the same teacher. That's why a lot of people like to shop around and have a look. So that's definitely a starting point. And if from there you can't find anything, we have some online programs that can be a next level of resource that, again, is not the in-person experience, but it's a diluted down version of that still gives people the opportunity to get the ball rolling and start to access something that they couldn't access in their local community. So just there's not teachers everywhere all over the world at the moment. So that's another option. And look, even there, if that's still out of their reach for some reason, the very simple thing that anyone can do is to just sit in a chair with your eyes closed, make sure you've got no distractions, no phone, no one coming in to see you, and to sit with your eyes closed, bring your mind's attention to the breath moving through the nostrils. And what you'll find is as the breath moves in and out of the nostrils, there's a very subtle and very slight cooling effect around the rim of the nostril. So what we're doing here is what's called a concentration meditation. We're going to really use a lot of effort and a lot of force to focus the mind on one single point, and that's the cooling skin around the rim of the nostril as the air moves in and out. And this is going to be very uncomfortable for the mind. It's going to find this extremely monotonous and very boring, and it's going to rebel against your intention to keep the mind there. And so you'll have a little bit of tug of war of the mind wanting to look somewhere else that it will find more fascinating, the future or the past, and you then applying some degree of force and discipline to the mind saying, no, you're going to stay here. That makes it uncomfortable. A lot of people don't do things that are uncomfortable these days. We like to do things that we like doing, like eating ice cream and listening to Spotify. But with some degree of diligence and application, what you'll find is by keeping the mind centered on that single point, A, you're going to increase your concentration capabilities, and B, you're going to de-excite your mind and nervous system over time. And you'll definitely, just from that simple exercise alone, find after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that you'll be more relaxed, much more calm, and in a better state than before you started the meditation.
I don't know. That kind of sounds exciting. It sounds pretty exciting having to fight with my
Yeah,
consciousness.
it's a great experience.
Actually.
Very, very rarely do we do that.
Yeah. But is it really meant to be boring? What if I do find it exciting and interesting and challenging to almost argue with my consciousness to force discipline on it? Would that be doing it wrong at all, or is it just how different people take it?
Not at all. If you think, the analogy I like to use is if we go to the gym and we use a dumbbell, and the dumbbell has a role to move the arm in one direction, which is south towards planet Earth because of gravity. And then we want to do something against the nature of the dumbbell. The dumbbell wants to go south and we want to go north. And so we're going to force the dumbbell in an opposite direction. Now, the bigger the dumbbell, the bigger the force required. And so by doing that particular force against its natural inclination to go down, we're going to force it up. We're developing a third thing, which is the muscle over here. And so we develop the muscle of the mind by going against this gravitational pull of the mind to want to go in this direction. We're going to say, no, you're going in this direction. And what we're doing is we're harnessing the power of the mind over time. And you'll find that in more challenging situations outside of your meditation, you're going to go, well, I've got this. I've done this plenty of times. I'm not going to let you go into panic and worry about some future scenario that isn't actually even happening. And I'm going to bring you back to the present moment, because that's all the only fundamental reality, absolute truth that's happening right now anyway. So let's just be here anyway.
That's really interesting. And with was it transcending
Transcending
meditation?
meditations. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where we go beyond deeper
Mhm.
meditations.
Yeah, with transcending meditations, that where we practice it twice a day. If, for example, we feel like we need to focus ourselves throughout the day, aside from these two practices, what practices would we do then? Would we not revert, revert's the wrong word, but would we continue to practice maybe mini transcending meditations, or should we be practicing something else?
So I like to compartmentalize the transcending meditations, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and then the rest of the day, go about your work. But during the rest of the day, what we then want to integrate is mindfulness. So mindfulness is different from meditation in my mind, and this is subjective, so people might have a different viewpoint, and I'm open to that. But mindfulness is what I do outside of meditation. So if I'm on the bus, if I'm driving my car, if I'm eating food, if I'm walking, where is my mind and what is mind doing? And Buddha once said, the mind is everything, what we think we become. And we are so neglectful of our mind that we are just happy to let our mind do whatever it wants to do. And it's like having a rebellious teenager that has no discipline, no boundaries. They end up going off the rails because there was no guidance system around them to show them a pathway forward that will lead to greater success and greater happiness. And we have just this flippant, unregulated, unchecked mind that is just devouring information after information and worrying and regretting and going off in all these different directions. And when we can harness the mind and utilize the mind rather than be the mind, then we find this tool to become a weapon that can be very, very useful in our life to increase and generate great success.
Yeah, I really like the rebellious teenager analogies. Actually, all of your analogies have been really visual, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's been such a pleasure getting to know more about transcending meditation, and with all of your advice. But lastly, before we end off the interview section, what advice do you have for those who are hoping to practice meditation to support their workplace productivity and efficiency?
I think just really prioritizing in your day your time allocation. And you think about every day we are going into some form of activity all day, every day, whether we're sleeping, going to the toilet, cleaning our bathroom floor, going to the gym, watching Netflix, going to work, going to do the shopping. All of that is dedicated to one thing, finding fulfillment. All action is motivated in the quest to find fulfillment. And we feel more fulfilled when the bathroom floor is cleaner. We feel more fulfilled when we do the grocery shopping because we need to eat food. We're more fulfilled when we watch Netflix because that makes us feel light and entertained. And one thing we notice is that all of our activities, we have to ask ourselves, has that led us to extreme levels of fulfillment? And so we need to prioritize fulfillment as getting clearer about where it actually exists. And there's a saying, the wise do not seek fulfillment in places where fulfillment does not exist. And we might find temporary glimpses of fulfillment in the eating of the ice cream and listening to Spotify and going to the gym. But do we get sustained, deep, long term fulfillment? And the question is probably the answer is probably no, because we have quite an unfulfilled society. So what we want to do is we want to tap into the source of fulfillment, the true sustained source of fulfillment, which is what they say happiness lies within, which is not a cliche. It's actually something that is true. And that there is an underlying essence within us beyond our thinking mind, beyond our feeling body, that is actually bliss. It is love, it is joy, and that's an inherent state within us all. And so we want to look at our day and go, okay, well, I have 72 20-minute segments, that's 24 hours, and each hour has 3 portions of 20 minutes, which means that we have 72 20-minute segments dedicated to finding fulfillment. And instead of looking outside of us in those 72 20-minute segments, why don't we look inside of us just for 20 minutes twice a day and then prioritize that inner quest to be an essential part of your day. And then what that will lead to will be a foundation of fulfillment that will be the place that you go into action from. So we want to go into action from fulfillment, not into action for fulfillment. It's a very different motivation.
Yeah. And can these 20 minutes be done sitting up in bed?
Yeah, anywhere where you can sit and close your eyes. So sitting in a car, in your garage, not while you're driving, parked, sitting in your bed, on a sofa, in a park, on a park bench, on a beach, anywhere where you're safe and you can close your eyes, I'd recommend is an ideal place. Obviously, the quieter and less stimulating, less confronting. Like if you're on a busy street in the middle of a mall, might be a little bit more challenging for your nervous system and your senses to go into those deep meditations. I can do that now these days, no problem. But in the early days, there might be a little bit of concern about the environment around you. So definitely the quieter, like a parked car or a quiet little room is always better.
That sounds convenient enough for me. So I will definitely be trying this at some point, Tom. You have truly inspired me with this transcending meditation that I've never considered even trying before. And hopefully, our audience will get some inspiration as well. Now, we are going into the practices and habits section. This is about the everyday application of what you have just shared with us. And I am aware that you did mention practicing mindfulness as a practice throughout the day aside from the meditation. But are there any other habits that you do to in conjunction with your meditation practices?
Yeah, it's really interesting that we have the embodiment of what it is that we're looking to access consciously. So we can have a really heightened level of consciousness, a really purified mind, in very positive mind, but then we might have a body riddled with stresses and riddled with toxic food and things like that. So I really take a very holistic approach to the embodiment of mind and body. And so I do saunas and ice baths, like I mentioned. I go to the gym 2 or 3, 4 times a week. I do yoga. Like doing brisk walk or cardio to get the heart beat up and to get the body sweating. So these are all critical things. Hydrating is I probably don't drink as much water as I should, but I'm trying to hydrate with quality water, quality liquids, avoiding a lot of toxicity. So avoiding really negative media, avoiding gossiping, avoiding um, slander, avoiding toxic food, avoiding alcohol as much as possible for people. I know it's a big part of our society, but it's a very toxic substance that we've normalized to putting in our body. Old dead food is really toxic for the body. So, really taking a very holistic approach to keeping everything light and as pure as possible.
Mhm. That sounds really wholesome, actually.
Yeah, we still want to live. It's okay to eat a pizza every now and then, but I think the key is just being very mindful of the way we're living
Mhm,
and
mhm,
checking that it's congruent for an optimized experience as a human.
mhm. And is this something that are these habits that you've always practiced, or did you ever experience a time where you have gone, hang on, I need to make a change in my life and I'm going to try and start practicing this? Have there been any challenges there?
Yeah, I used to live a very unhealthy lifestyle. I used to take a lot of drugs, drink a lot, sleep really badly, dehydrate, worry, a lot of anxiety, and eventually led to depression. And it was about going deep into why am I here and how did I get here? And that's where a lot of the world is right now. They're depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, not sleeping well, unhealthy, obese. We never had such a obese, unhealthy, and almost I'd suggest probably unhappy society than what we've got right now. And I think a lot of that is very easily changed by the way we eat, the way we drink, the way we sleep, and what we do with our mind. And I think when we tweak it, it was quite amazing. It blew me away, really, when I tweaked my lifestyle, not massively. I continued on as a broker for 16 more years after this big paradigm shift that I went through. And yeah, we can live our current lives not that dissimilar to the way we're living them, but just tweak a few things here and there and refine and fine tune the way we're doing some of the things. And just go to bed a bit earlier, drink a little bit more water, cut back on some of those toxic things, increase some of those healthy things, sit for meditation just a little bit every day. These little minor changes can have huge long term benefits in the way we live our life.
Right. And it sounds like a work in progress where you start with one small thing or a couple of small things and you go from there rather than trying to attempt changing your entire lifestyle all at once, because all that will do is if it leads to, well, I don't want to say failure, but if if it leads to you not being able to do all of it and change your entire lifestyle, it will only make you feel worse about it rather than going for small, attainable shifts. And that's more or less what people recommend with setting goals anyway, which is entirely applicable to lifestyle changes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to go out all guns blazing straight away. Just make a little bit of a change here and there, incremental shifts. I'm still, even after, gosh, I've been doing this for so long, 30 years now, still making adjustments, refinements, learning new things, new formulas, new supplements, new superfoods. I just came across shilajit the other day, which has been really great to integrate into my life. It's a thick, black, sticky substance that comes from, I think, northern Pakistan. It's amazing, very high potent mineral substance. So, yeah, there's things you'll always learn and adapt and change to.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think our audience will be able to learn so much from you. Now we're going on to questions from the audience. This is where we get our audience to submit some questions to us. And the first question that we have is, what recommendations do you have for those who are new to meditation and wish to incorporate it into their workday but have yet to do so?
I guess we covered this a bit earlier on, but I think really finding a qualified teacher is first and foremost. Like I said, like Buddha said, the mind is everything. And we are very lackadaisical, flippant about the power of the mind. And even when it comes to meditation, a lot of people just like, oh, I'll just jump on YouTube, see if I can watch a video. But if you can actually go deep into the learning from someone that's qualified, it's like getting your plumbing done by a qualified plumber or electrician coming to do your electrics, someone that's been trained in that field. I think that would be the most compelling and most impacting way of learning to meditate, is to find a qualified teacher in your area that will be able to take you through the process. If that's not possible, then finding something online that is going to enable you to learn some form of meditation and shop around. If the technique you're finding isn't one that you're resonating with, and try a different technique, because there's so many different ways that we can meditate. But then really thinking about your day and finding windows of time. I would say two windows of time, one in the morning when you wake up and one in the afternoon or early evening or just before bed. You can block out and just go, this is such critical time. And the most valuable way I can spend this time is to sit in meditation. So reassess your values when it comes to meditating.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that I myself am going to try to start incorporating, because I do admittedly spend about half an hour in bed scrolling through social media. And while I do learn very valuable things from social media, because I've trained my algorithm very, very, very hard to be that way, I still think that it would be slightly more beneficial to start practicing meditation if I can. But are there any apps or tools that you'd recommend using in conjunction with our meditation practice, be it to keep track of it or um, to learn more about other types of meditation?
I think one app that I like, who's a friend of mine owns this app, it's called Insight Timer, and they have a really good timer and accountability, and it tracks, how many meditations you've done. I think there's so many apps out there now that you can get a lot of these things on, but that's one that I go to a bit, which I find quite useful. And that meditation that I gave everyone is the audio of that is in Insight Timer. If they just search Tom Cronin in Insight Timer, they'll find that free meditation in there. So that's definitely a place to go to and get your accountability and your timer, and that can help you along the way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've actually heard of Insight Timer. So it's so incredible that someone that you know owns that app. But that's pretty much it for audience questions. So if you'd like to submit your questions to our guests, check out Instagram stories early in the week, Monday or Tuesday, AEST. You'll see who we're talking to and what we're talking about. And you might just hear your question answered on the air. So thank you, Tom, for answering those questions for our audience. Now we're moving on to the open mic section, and this is your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. But if it is, then go ahead, go wild, go crazy. The floor is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you. We're going to have some very challenging times ahead, as we already have in the last, few years. And it's normal for our society to think that when bad things happen, we feel bad. And when good things happen, we feel good. We're in this sort of reactive response. We're in this reactive state where I'm constantly being pushed and pulled by circumstances of life, and I'm wanting things to be good, but they just don't seem to always work out that way. And some things will happen that don't work in my favor. You meet someone on Tinder, you feel happy, then they walk away from you and say they want to meet someone else, and then you feel sad. You buy Bitcoin and it goes up, and Bitcoin goes down and you feel sad. So we're in this sort of up and down state all the time. So what we want to do is we want to find something that's a little bit more sovereign, a little bit more independent, a little bit more free from these machinations of life. And there is a part of us that is able to stand firm and be unmoved by these circumstances. It's a state of very calm blissfulness. And one of the highest states that we can get into when it comes to the measurable vibration of that state is actually the state of peace. And peace is just below enlightenment. It's really interesting. When you Google the love frequency chart, you'll see all the different hertz, Hertz, the measurable frequencies of the states that we can be in, like shame and guilt and anger and happiness. They all have a particular resonance or frequency. But peace is one of the highest frequencies. And yet very few people subscribe to the idea of experiencing peace. We're always in this idea that I want to get high, I want to get excited, I want to get thrilled, and I want to avoid pain and suffering. So what we want to do is find peace. And peace is the absence of all those fluctuations that happen with life. And the ultimate way, I think, to find peace, which is one of the most profound states we can be in, is to quieten the mind and quieten the nervous system and quieten our emotional state. And then when we do that on a regular basis, peace becomes our foundation. It becomes our normal state, and it's something that we can carry with us. So let's open ourselves up to the idea that peace lies within us, and we can find that peace through meditation and prioritizing meditation, so we can get to a state that not a lot of the world is promoting or suggesting or inspiring us to get to, which is peace. So hopefully I can inspire some people to find inner peace.
You definitely are making it sound very enticing for me, Tom. I will admit to that. I mean, I was just thinking about it as you were talking about the different frequencies, and I was just wondering maybe that finding peace does sound like that also helps you dampen the the effects of negative emotions on our being. And would you say that that's true?
I would say rather than dampen, because that sounds like a suppression or an oppression, I would say it supersedes. So the negative emotions just simply melt away. So imagine there's blue sky, and then the negative emotions are the clouds that come in to the sky. Now, the blue sky, which is peace, is always there. So the blue sky is there no matter what. What happens is that when we melt away the negative emotions, and they just melt away because it's superseded by this new state of peace, and the negative emotions melt away in our meditation process. So we need to be in a process, which is the meditation. And as a result of the meditation, what we get is more of peace.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So it's almost
Thank
like a
you.
replacement.
Yeah. All right. That sounds really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Now, before we end off, if our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
There's two places to find me. I mean, many places to find me, but they can find me ultimately on Instagram is a great place. So I like to hear from everyone. I like to answer my messages. So reach out to me at Tom Cronin, just one word, TomCronin, Tom Cronin. And my website again is tomcronin.com. So those two places are a good starting point. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, but those are good starting points.
Amazing. We'll link this in the show notes. Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today. Are there any last pieces of advice or words that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I guess my favorite quote is a Sanskrit quote called Yogastha Kuru Kamani. And what that means is established in being or peace, established in being, perform action. So, we want to make the foundation of our day being peace and fulfillment, and then from there go into action. So Yogastha Kuru Kamani, established in being, perform action, make action the outcome and the thing that you express your fulfillment from, rather than you go into action for fulfillment. So that would be the thing that I'd like to leave with the audience.
Thank you so much, Tom. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast. We'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pe.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.